and off we go, because the San Francisco 49ers, after 15 days of not playing, we'd kind of forgotten about them, Peter. They were 3-0. It was so weird to see the 49ers at 3-0 with all these teams that had 5 games that they had played. But game number 4 came on Monday night for the 49ers, and it was a huge one for that team. They've reminded everyone who they are. They are the last unbeaten team in the NFC and one of 2 unbeaten teams in the NFL. But a great performance on both sides of the ball, really in all phases. 275 rushing yards for the 49ers last night. Matt Breida, he had that 80-plus yard run right out of the cannon on the first play from scrimmage for the 49ers. Jimmy Garoppolo, not spectacular, but good enough. Not big numbers. This is the way the 49ers offense is supposed to work. Balance. This is what the Vikings have been striving for. We saw it on Monday night. True balance. Great passing, great running. If you run well, you can pass well. If you pass well, you can run well. And if you throw a great defense on top of it, and they suffocated the Browns. They had Baker Mayfield running for his life all night long, Peter. It was a thing of beauty for the 49ers. And we have to take them seriously in an NFC where I don't think anybody knows who the best team is.
Look, what it said to me last night, I just keep looking at roster depth. We talked about it in the open, and in my opinion, coming into this year, Matt Breida was the number 3 running back on that depth chart behind McKinnon and Coleman. And now he comes out of the box running 23 miles an hour. Those things just sort of wash over me, Mike. I don't pay much attention to it. But, when you hear things like that's the fastest a runner has run in the NFL this season, when you start hearing things like that, you start saying, this is the number 3 running back on the San Francisco 49ers, or at least was when they thought that they were going to have both Jerick McKinnon and Tevin Coleman healthy at the start of the year. So that tells me they've done a really good job of building roster depth. I think the other thing last night that we saw is that the 49ers can overcome mistakes. In the first 2 years of the Shanahan regime, they weren't very good at that. Okay, and they overcame mistakes because Robbie Gould last missed 2 field goals in a game when mastodons roamed the earth. And so they could survive, a shaky game from a great field goal kicker. That's number 2. And the third thing is, and Mike, I'm sure you talked about it a lot in the first hour, but I think every single team has to have that match between offense and defense. It's why you worry about the Chicago Bears right now. You have to be at least competent on both sides of the ball. And right now, the San Francisco 49ers are north of competent on offense, and they're very good on defense. Isn't it coincidental and interesting that statistically now, the top 2 teams in the NFL on defense are the Patriots and the 49ers, the last 2 unbeaten teams?
Yeah, and I was praising the Packers yesterday as perhaps the most balanced team in the NFC, but if we're going to consider the 49ers as one of the best teams in the NFC, we have to consider them as one of the most balanced, because it is offense plus defense, an offensive head coach not neglecting a critical side of the ball. And you know what? Look, last night, the key play for me, the moment where it really turned, was when the Browns were driving down 14-3. Baker Mayfield has Antonio Callaway, fresh from a 4-game suspension, open at the goal line. The throw wasn't perfect, and Mayfield admitted that himself after the game. But Callaway did the volleyball thing, popped it up into the air. It was picked off, big return. Next thing you know, it's 21-3, a 14-point swing. And that, to me, felt like the dagger, that the Browns were not going to be able to move the ball effectively enough to erase that gap. But it just does show you that They're, and I don't know that it would have made a difference if they would have made it 14-10. Maybe the 49ers would have continued to smother them the way they did. But that one play here, that one play there, that really can cause the dam to break in a game that maybe would have been closer, Peter.
Yeah, no question about it. And I fault Mayfield for that throw. Callaway probably should catch it, but it's down on the ground. He made his receivers uncomfortable for much of the night, Mike. And I only saw half of this game, and then I saw the highlights otherwise. But I just kept watching that game, and I kept saying, man, Baker Mayfield, really, his accuracy was questionable last night. And the other thing I think that we have to acknowledge right now is that the Cleveland Browns need major help on the offensive line. They face a stout defensive front like they faced last night, and look and see what happens. And they just, Baker Mayfield couldn't breathe all night. Freddie Kitchens got his work cut out for him right now, Mike, because that is a 2-3 team, justifiably 2-3. They have been smoked by Tennessee. They have been smoked by San Francisco, and they've lost fairly narrowly to the Rams, but that was a justifiable result. So they have won 2 games so far, and they've only, really been great in one of them, and that was the Ravens game. So now you've got in consecutive weeks Seattle and New England to play. So this thing could go off the rails. If they're sitting there 2-5 near the midpoint, all of a sudden everybody is jumping off the bandwagon, and the Browns really are going to have a hard time making something of what should have been a redemptive season.
The schedule softens for them eventually. They've got the Steelers twice and the Bengals twice over the final 7 weeks of the season. But you got to make it there. And if they're done by the time we get to Week 11 and they get a chance to go Steelers, Dolphins, Steelers, Bengals, Cardinals, it's not going to matter at that point. They got to survive this, Peter. Seahawks, Patriots, then at the Broncos, which is not going to be easy. And that Bills game coming up Week 10, that's one of those in April that look like, we'll win that one. Now you look at it and you say, this is the Bills. They're pretty damn good this year. So the Browns do have some major work to do. And Peter, this is a point I made last hour. Kind of a weird scheduling quirk where you've got both of the teams that played on Monday night. They're playing the teams that played on Thursday night. So those teams have extra time. The Seahawks have extra time to get ready for the Browns, who are flying back to Cleveland. They got 5 days to get ready for this game against the Seahawks, who had extra time. And the Rams have extra time to get ready for the 49ers. Kind of a weird little thing that, look, it's impossible to cover every base when you make the schedule. But I'm sure the Browns are looking at this saying, my God, the Seahawks have already had 4 or 5 games to be thinking about us, and we're just getting started on this one.
No doubt about it, Mike. And I mean, look, we can talk about scheduling quirks, but I love, after the Raiders game on Sunday, I talked to Trent Brown. Okay. And obviously the Raiders looked so good for all but the third quarter of that game in London, legitimately, justifiably won that game, were the better team against the Chicago Bears. And now you look at it and say, and I'm going to digress here for 1 second, you look at the whole scheduling issue in the NFL and how outraged the Raiders were. Well, the Raiders have gone to the conquerors of the Chiefs, the Indianapolis Colts, and beat them, and then flown across the Atlantic, where you, by the way, do not have a passport, and you are not allowed to go to London, Mike. So they go and do this. And they now have won 2 in a row on this odyssey of a road trip, this 43 days away from Oakland. And Trent Brown basically said to me, he goes, hey, listen, that's above my pay grade. I don't care. We got 16 Sundays or 16 whatevers, and I just go play the game. And I got to tell you, ignorance is bliss sometimes. What does it matter what you think of the schedule once it's been made? Who cares? You shouldn't grouse about it. You ought to just go play it. And that is exactly what the Oakland Raiders have done. And that's what the Browns and the 49ers will have to do this weekend, with both of them having very big games. Mike, the 49ers and the Rams is such an interesting match, starting with the coaches, who are great admirers of each other, and then going right to the quarterbacks, who both, obviously you're waiting to see, are they going to be great NFL quarterbacks for a long period of time? They've both gotten paid like that so far, but we'll see which one or both is actually going to turn out to be great over a long period.
Yeah, this has the chance to become a great, great rivalry. When you look at the broader NFC West picture with the Seahawks in there as well, and we saw that great Seahawks-Rams game, and there's a Seahawks-49ers game coming up on a Monday night a few weeks from now. This is a great round robin in that division where you could have all three of those teams possibly make it to the postseason, or maybe they cannibalize each other enough where only one or two can make it in. But three great teams, all assigned to the same division, all jockeying for the same position. And this is desperation for the Rams, and the 49ers are not going to shrink in the face of this. They see the opportunity they have. They can deliver an early knockout blow to the Rams. If they could go down to L.A. and win there and go to 5-0 and send the Rams to 3-3, Peter. And I think this 49ers team, based upon what I saw last night, they're good enough to do it.
No question about it. They're good enough to do it because of defensive pressure. And you saw when Richard Sherman was mic'd up last night, Mike, where he was going up and down the sidelines, and he goes, "We cover, y'all rush." And he was saying that to the defensive line. And that is the basic principle of what makes a really good defense. And right now, in my opinion, when you look at, what you have, I think both of these teams can rush and both can cover. Based on what I saw last night, I mean, I've got to like right now a very slight edge to the San Francisco 49ers, on the defensive side of the ball.
All right, quick break. When we return, did Baker Mayfield's biggest mistake on Monday night come before the game even started? We'll discuss that when PFT Live continues right after this.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.